It was the phone call one mom will never forget.
She told me that some guy tried to take her.
A 10-year-old screaming to her mother that a man had pulled up next to her as she was walking home.
Her brother had been in a serious accident and that she needed to come with him.
She got away thanks to her mom.
We came up with a code word, and this one time, it saved my daughter's life.
She and her daughter had a code word. When she asked the man for that word, he didn't know it and took off. And this isn't the first time that a parent has used a code to keep their kids safe. You might remember one dad's X-Plan. Blogger Bert Falks went viral last year after revealing how he can help his teenage son when he doesn't feel safe. All the boy has to do is text his dad the letter X. Immediately after, his father will call and tell him that he needs to come pick him up for a family emergency. So, should you have a code with your child?
Prepare your kids. It goes towards talking to your kids, making them aware that there are dangers out there.
And joining us right now, psychotherapist Jamie Lacey, to talk more about the importance of doing this. Great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Such an important topic.
It really is. I was talking about this yesterday when we first heard about the story, that our child's school has a code word that when you go to pick up the child, they say, great, glad you're here. What's the code word? And we oftentimes don't think about doing that in our personal lives.
We don't, because it's part of that difficult conversation where we have to think about that there are dangers out there and that our kids can have things happen to them. So it's forcing us to deal with certain things. But we have plans for so many other things, and this should be an important one, to teach our children not to be anxious about going out and those types of things, but to be cautious, right? To talk to them about some of the dangers that are out there and then how to protect them if something was to happen. And that's where the plan comes into play, or code word.
I think this would be more effective in times when, not when there's an emergency, a kidnapping, because that's probably pretty rare. This is when your child is at a party or at someone else's house or in an environment where they're not comfortable and they want to get out without hurting someone's feelings. The code sentence or code word would work for that too, I presume.
Absolutely, and that is 100% correct in the fact that stranger abductions is about 20%, I think, is what the statistics say. So there's usually other dangerous types of situations. So teaching them a code word when they're, depending on their age, right? So my son is turning 7 and he has a code word, you know, and so he knows if out of his routine and certain types of things, if someone was to come and try to pick him up, that they would have to know the specific code word that only his family knows. So age appropriately, so when they become a teenager and they get a little bit older, to be able to have escape plans, so to speak, even total different topic, but even around sex and those types of things, so that they can get out and not get embarrassed or not have a shame around them.
I think the important part of this too is that there is no age limit on a code word, right? So
Absolutely.
I think sometimes when you're a teenager, you're 15, 16, 17 years old, and you're in an uncomfortable situation and you don't want to be able to leave, you can get on your phone, which my son does. We have our own little code text. If he's in an uncomfortable situation, for me to come pick him up. So I think age is an important factor because there is no limit, right?
There is no limit, but the code word or the plan would be appropriate to their age.
Right.
Right, because my son does not have a cell phone right now, thank goodness.
Aren't you lucky? You're lucky.
You can wait a long time on
I'm going to stretch that as much as possible.
Yeah,
but when they're teenagers, they should.
It does work, though, as a teenager. My code sentence goes back 30 years, Janie, and I still remember it.
You had one when you were a kid.
It was, Mom, my stereo. I think I left my stereo on. And that was code for her to go into yes or no questions that I could answer without anyone else knowing what I was talking about.
Interesting. Yes. And of course, that was back when you had to use the dial phone. Right?
That was on the wall.
But Mom had it right. There was a common phrase that was used that only you and her would know was the code, so someone around you would not necessarily be triggered. And that's the key, especially when they're older.
I do want to ask you this before we go. So you use that code word, but what happens if you are in a dangerous situation, right? Because you just can't say to your kid who's 7 or my kid who's 15, hey, listen, use a code word. What happens if that doesn't work? What do you do then?
Well, it depends on the situation, but I go back to what my dad told me when I was a little girl. He said if someone was to ever try to take you or do anything, he said if I was to find you, I want to make sure that you fought.
Yes.
Right, so we teach our children to outside of that, every day we should be teaching our children confidence, that they have a voice,
Yes.
that their voice matters. So when those moments happen, all of the things that we're teaching them up until that point is going to now come into play, right? We go into fight or flight. So if they know that they matter, they're going to go into fight, or depending on the situation, we teach them to run.
And that the adult's word isn't God, right? Because we all, little kids especially, oh, it's an
Sure.
adult, we have to do what they say. And we want to make sure that our kids know that's not always the case.
Right. So I've taught my son that if he ever got into a situation and he needed help, a police officer or a mother with kids.
Yes.
Right. Not just anybody.
If they're lost,
So-
always look for another mom to
Yes.
help you. I
That's
say
a
that all the
great piece of
time.
advice,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Great to have you.
No offense.
See you.
Dads with kids will work too.
That they will.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So you at home, come up with a code sentence or a code word. It's important.
It certainly is, absolutely.
Well, coming up next, Thanksgiving